Well, thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? You understand the southern accent all right? Okay. Well, look, it's a real honour to be here, and I do urge you, if you're not a member of the JBS, I think it's a great thing to join up because, as a young guy in New Zealand in the 70s, my education basically came through JBS literature and materials that were passed around, brought down by American servicemen, etc. I remember some hearing about JBS literature on the coffee tables down at Scott Base in Antarctica. So it was getting around, and it really made a difference, a huge difference in my life. I wouldn't have been set on the path I am today without reading, The Naked Communist and works by Alan Stang and Gary Allen and others. And still today with Christian Gomez's work and Alex Newman and always Bill Jasper, who I regard as one of the finest journalists working in this country today, easily. So I'll just start with a little story because I think it illustrates where we are. I was in Los Angeles not long ago, and I walked up to a street vendor to buy some food. And the guy said to me, "Hey, you've got an accent. Where are you from?" I said, "Well, actually, I'm from New Zealand." He said, "Well, where's that?" So to make it easy for him, I said, "Well, look, it's actually down it's down near Australia." He said, "Where Arnold Schwarzenegger comes from." So you guys in your work educating the public, I'm sure you see a lot more ignorance than apathy. There's a lot of people who care about their country, but not many who actually know what's going on. And I have to credit the John Birch Society people that I meet around the country. There is no group or organisation who are more clued up to the state of this country than you guys. And I meet you all over the country, folks, and you always have your fingers on the pulse. I remember reading an article back in the 60s by an enemy of the John Birch Society who said, "Whatever else you may say, they're always right. They have always predicted the trends. They've always said what's going to come next, and they were always right." Because when you understand the forces at work in society, you understand the conspiratorial nature of those forces, you can predict what they're going to do next. And that's a very valuable thing when you're fighting a war, folks. If you don't know what the enemy is going to do next, you're really in trouble. Now, I want to talk today about the national security situation in this country. And there are two aspects of it. Obviously, we have the external one. And the biggest thing we've seen in recent times is the North Korea escapade. Now, I am no friend of North Korea, or its government rather, but I think what we have to be aware of right now is you have Russian and Chinese troops on the North Korean border. China is giving North Korea its food, Russia is giving them their military hardware. The idea that North Korea is some kind of rogue state that operates on its own initiative is complete garbage. Now, right now, unfortunately, the United States is at a big military disadvantage when it comes to Russia and China. China's really been building up its military. Russia is way ahead of this country on nuclear weapons right now and ahead of this country on conventional forces. What I have been told is that had President Trump mounted an attack on North Korea, Russia and China were ready to join in. It was a bait. It's a bait in the trap. They want to bait him. They want to do so. He does a first strike. Then they can say, "Well, America started this war," and that's a very big thing when it comes to world public opinion. So I think right now President Trump has taken the wise course, and he's really embarking on a program of economic warfare against North Korea by freezing China. Trying to freeze China out of American markets until such time as they stop supplying North Korea and stop using North Korea as a pawn. because that's all North Korea is, folks. Same with Iran. Iran does nothing that Russia does not okay first. This fiction that we have through the American State Department that we've got two rogue states on the world stage, Iran and North Korea. It's a very convenient fiction for the State Department because they can go out and they can say, well, we're working with China now to calm North Korea down. We're going to make overtures to the Russians so they will put pressure on Iran. This is all a complete fiction, as I'm sure you're well aware. Both of those countries are doing what Russia and China tell them to do, and if we are going to confront Iran and North Korea, we need to be confronting Russia and China, because they are the puppet masters in this. And of course, as you know, there are puppet masters beyond that as well. So I think right now it is not the time to be attacking North Korea, because we're not in a position of strength to do it. Now is the time to be applying economic pressure as much as possible and cast both China and Russia adrift from US economic support, because neither of those countries would be what they are today without your taxpayers' support, folks. You know darn well that you've been propping those countries up for decades. Now, on the internal front, if you look at the country today, have you seen as much chaos in our streets since the 1970s? I'm sure most of you are too young to remember those times, but they were pretty bad back then. But the difference was this. Back then, we had an FBI and a government that was prepared to go after the radicals. You know, the Weather Underground was bombing the Pentagon. It was, supported by Cuba. They were bombing they tried to bomb a military base in New Jersey. The bomb blew up and killed their own people, but they were going to kill dozens of US servicemen. It was only sheer luck that they didn't kill a lot more people than they did. You had the Puerto Rican FALN terrorists who killed many people around your country. You had the Black Panther Party, Maoist, Chinese supported, who was killing people, often their own, but killing people in cities all over your country. And you had race riots in almost every major American city. From Newark, New Jersey to all over the place, parts of New York, etc. Because at that time, you had Cuban and Russian and Chinese forces working with your radicals to create as much mayhem as they could. And I had a little chat the other day. Well, last year I was in Chicago for the annual People's Summit. 3,000 communists gathered round in a room. This year they had 4,500. And I got talking to Carl Davidson. I was there filming for my movie. I got talking to Carl Davidson, an old member of the SDS, the League of Revolutionary Struggle. Now he's with Democratic Socialists of America. And I said, Carl, you were there in '68. What do you see happening in America's future? And he said, '68 was great, but the next one, which is just around the corner, will be even greater. And I said, why do you say that, Carl? He said, well, back then, in the '60s, it was just us crazy radicals. We had foreign support, but it was us crazy radicals. America was still conservative. America was patriotic. Most Americans supported American values. But we've had 40 years in the universities now to indoctrinate the youth and, he said, teach the youth about Marxism. The next 68 is just around the corner, people, and it's going to be so much bigger and so much better. Because America has changed, folks. America has changed so much. And imagine if there hadn't been an organisation like yours to slow the radicals down, imagine where we'd be today. So the plan is very simple. We all knew that Hillary Clinton was going to get elected, right? We were told continuously in the media it was inevitable, that there's no way that she wouldn't be the next president. But what happened on election night, folks? Thanks, I believe, to God and the wisdom of the founding fathers who gave you the Electoral College. and long may you keep it. So we got this situation. We got a new president, and he's made a lot of noises about a lot of good things. A lot of things I think would resonate with some of you people. You know, getting out of or renegotiating NAFTA, closing the border wall, rebuilding the American military, reforming education. So far, not a lot of that's happened, and he seems to be drifting into the swamp. He's got the media on his case, he's got the Republican rhinos on his case, he's got the Democrats on his case. In fact, the only sector of America who isn't on President Trump's case right now are the people who elected him. And I think people need to start standing up and calling him out a lot more on what he is doing, praising him for what he does right, and calling him out from what he isn't doing that he promised he would do. Because this is the situation, folks. I think that election was a reprieve. Because if Hillary Clinton had won, she was going to do two things. She promised within the first 100 days of taking office that she was going to legalize every illegal immigrant in the country and give them citizenship and voting rights. Now, as there are between 12 and 30 million illegals here, at least, and they will vote about 80% Democrat, that would have given the Democrats between 10 and 24 million new votes. Now, considering Donald Trump won by a few 100,000 and Mitt Romney lost by less than 2.5 million, you give the Democrats 10 to 24 million votes, what do you think this country would look like very quickly? What do you think's happening in California now? Once in Orange County, which was once the most conservative county in the entire United States, the communists came into Orange County. They signed up thousands of illegal immigrant voters. They committed vote fraud, and they got rid of B1 Bob Dornan, and they gave you Loretta Sanchez. And that was the first step in taking California into a lockdown, completely blue state. Well, that was Hillary Clinton's plan for America, folks. Had Hillary Clinton been elected, you would have already seen every illegal in this country given citizenship and voting rights. And I doubt that you would ever have any chance of ever electing a conservative or even a Republican president ever again. They would do to every state in this nation what they've already done to California. And I don't think they would stop there, people. California still has to put up with, some, interference by Washington, D.C. But you imagine if this whole state, this whole country was controlled by the Democratic Party, who are controlled by the unions, who are controlled by the communists. This would not become like France or Germany, folks, as Sean Hannity keeps trying to tell you. This would be like Venezuela pretty darn quickly, and Cuba not long after. Now, the other thing Hillary Clinton was going to do, she was going to enact UN Resolution 1618, which she's had a lot to do with. When she was head of the State Department, they were working actively with the Organization of Islamic Conference, 57-member, largest NGO in the world, to get this through the United Nations. And this would have become law in your country. And what this resolution effectively does is to outlaw any slander of Islam. Any. Now, when I say slander, I'm talking slander in Islamic terms. To you, slander is telling a malicious lie about someone. To a Muslim, slander is saying anything that they may find offensive, no matter how true it is. Now, you imagine living in a country right now where you never had any chance of electing another conservative, where the Democrats controlled virtually every state, and you could never say one single thing about the Islamization of your country or the hundreds of thousands and then millions of Islamics, refugees and Muslims that would have been invited to flood into your country. You couldn't say a thing, folks. We dodged a very big bullet in the last election, folks, and elections matter. Now, you may be a Trump fan, you may not be a Trump fan, but I got to say, I am so grateful that that man won the election because he gave us another chance. And I see it like this. I don't see it was a change of direction or a new future for America. It was a reprieve, a second chance. And if you look at the Bible, there's a lot of second chances in the Old Testament, right? You're wandering off the reservation, guys. You need to get back on track. And sometimes they did, and sometimes they didn't. But how many third chances were in the Old Testament, folks? So we're sitting on that second chance right now. And right now, the left understands this. See, this was their plan. Who remembers the old Jesse Jackson Rainbow Coalition of the 1980s? 84 and 88. Jesse Jackson had the brilliant idea of gathering every communist in America under his banner, and they would get the black progressives and the Native American progressives and the Asian American progressives. Progressives means communists, of course. The Latino communists, the progressive whites, the gays. They had the lavender, they had the red, they had the brown, they had the yellow, the black, the whole lot. This was the Rainbow Coalition. And Jesse Jackson ran on that and got 7 million votes. Well, right now, the plan is to reinvent the Rainbow Coalition. It's being organized by a man called Stephen Phillips out of California. He was a former member of the League of Revolutionary Struggle at Stanford University, a Maoist communist. He married into the very wealthy Sandler family of San Francisco, very big liberal donors. He got a whole bunch of money and he set up a PAC. And that PAC was the first organization to back Barack Obama. And right now he's got behind Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey, and Kamala Harris, the new senator from California. See, Cory Booker was at Stanford with Steve Phillips. Kamala Harris's sister was at Stanford with Steve Phillips. They have a whole network around this country now through a thing called Power Pack, where they are trying to elect progressives of colour to the Georgia governorship, to various congressional and Senate seats around the country. And in 2020, the plan is this. They're going to run with Deval Patrick or Cory Booker or Kamala Harris or maybe Elizabeth Warren, and they're going to rebuild the Rainbow Coalition. Because, see, if you're a leftist, you own the black population, right? So you think. You own the Latinos. You own the gays. You own the Native Americans. You own the Asian Americans. And they figure that this new coalition, because of the change of demographics in this country, they say there's 25% of the electorate are white progressives. They will vote Democrat if Adolf Hitler was on the ticket. 26% of the country are progressives of colour. Asian, black, Latino, Muslim, etc. 25 and 26 is 51%, the new American majority. So they aim to do this, and then if they win, they're going to legalise every illegal in the country, and they have their one-party state. And the reason they are so absolutely angry at Donald Trump, have you ever seen the level of vitriol in your time directed at this president? Some deserve, some not, but generally way over the top in proportion to anything he's actually done. Because they see this. When Donald Trump went to those white union workers in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Ohio that the Democrats thought they owned and said, what have the Democrats done for you? We're going to rebuild American industry. We're going to renegotiate and get out of NAFTA. Well, a lot of those guys said, yeah, what have the Democrats done for us? And they crossed over. When he went into the black communities, ridden with crime and drugs and poverty, and said, vote for me, guys, what have you got to lose? They said, yeah, what have we got to lose? And a whole bunch of them crossed over, enough for him to win. See, what the left is now, they are freaking out. They're absolutely freaking out. Because if Donald Trump can do significant amounts of what he promised, if he can close down the illegal immigration, if he can open up the energy fields, lower the taxes, get on top of the crime in the inner cities, and just a little diversion, people. I'm sure you all know that America has a big opiate problem right now, a big heroin problem. It's even in little towns like this. It's in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's in New Hampshire. Heroin is everywhere. Well, how do you know how secure your borders are, people? It is the price of heroin on your streets. You are being flooded with cheap heroin, killing your kids, because the Democrats kept the borders open for 8 years to flood this country with new Democrat voters. Didn't matter what it was doing to your kids. Didn't matter what it was doing to your communities. They are so concerned with a naked power grab, they were willing to allow that to happen, folks. That's the humanitarian Democrats. And believe me, I'm not giving the Republicans an out on this, but we're talking about the left right now. So the plan is this. If Donald Trump can get on top of all of those things, if he can bring some of those white progressives across, the white union guys, if he can get a significant amount of the black population across, he could keep the Democrats out of power for 50 years. He could completely realign American politics. And the left, they are basically like a bunch of kids. They thought they were going to get Hillary. They thought they had a one-party state within their grasp. Their dream of a progressive socialist America was this close. And they are like a bunch of kids who thought they were going to get a bike for Christmas and got a pair of socks, folks. They are angry. What I'm saying in a nutshell, so you got Black Lives Matter, which is completely controlled by the Maoist Freedom Road Socialist Organisation. This is an organisation founded out of the old SDS members and the old 70s Maoist organisation, and they're right into race. Race is the Maoists' method of destabilising a country. So they're behind Black Lives Matter. You got Antifa, which comes with their origin goes right back to Leon Trotsky. Leon Trotsky founded Antifa units, little bands of paramilitary thugs who were used to intimidate opponents before the Bolshevik Revolution. He did it in Italy against Mussolini, and he did it again in Nazi Germany against the Nazis. And guess what? There were 600,000 Nazi brown shirts at the peak of their movement, Hitler's thugs. When they beat the Antifa and the German Communist Party, it ended up over half of the ranks of Hitler's brown shirts were former communists or socialists. They all switched because there was no ideological difference, or very little. It was just which thug was going to come out on top. And they were backing the Soviet thug, but when the German Nazi thug beat them, they all switched over. And they became the best little Nazis you'd ever see. They called them beefsteak Nazis. Brown on the outside, red in the middle. There is no, all this garbage, Nazism right, communism left. You know that's garbage. They are both extreme left ideologies. They are like two biker gangs fighting for turf, or two mafia families fighting to control a drug trade in a certain area. And if one mafia family comes out on top, guess what? All the people from the one that's beaten go and join the other one. And that's what happened with the Nazis and Antifa at that time. So now you've got a situation where Antifa isn't controlled so much by the Communist Party, though they're heavily involved in it. Antifa is now the tool of the Democrat Party, because the Democrat Party is the Communist Party in America today. So Antifa is, if you look at all the violence, the big Antifa violence in this country, it's been places like Boston, Washington, D.C., Charlottesville, Virginia, Portland, Oregon, Berkeley, San Francisco, and Oakland, California. What do all those places have in common, folks? They are all controlled by far-left Democrat city councils, every one of them. And the police are under the control of those councils, and everywhere Antifa has kicked up a riot, we have found that the police have been called back, held in bay, not allowed to do their jobs. Because Antifa is basically the shock troops of the Democratic Party used to shut down and silence any conservative opposition whatsoever. And if you think the Democrats win the whole country and they don't use Antifa all over the country to shut you down, I think you're dreaming, people. They will do what they've done in Berkeley. You know, Ben Shapiro did a speech here recently on free markets. It cost the university $600,000 in security so that man could do a speech. Can you afford $600,000 in security so I can do a speech here in front of you guys? Because if the Democrats control America, that's what you'll have to do, folks. They'll be coming after their enemies like you cannot believe. You know, and when they've got complete power, they will not be leaving you alone, folks. You saw what they did to the Tea Parties with the tax-exempt status and that sort of thing. Well, that was just a warm-up. Every Christian church, every conservative Christian church will be targeted. Gay activists will come into their churches and say, we want to get married. And the pastor will say, no, we don't agree with that. You'll have to go somewhere else. And they'll get slapped with a $5 million lawsuit backed up by Cory Booker's Justice Department. Every organisation like this will be targeted in every possible way, and they will try to do this to this country what they did to Rhodesia and South Africa and many other countries around the world. And we have to be on President Trump's case every second of the day, folks. When he starts talking about DACA and doing deals with the Democrats on DACA, that's national suicide he's talking, folks. We don't give him a break on that. We should be twittering and Facebooking, going crazy about that, because that is a foot in the door to mass amnesty. And mass amnesty is the end of this country. And not just this country, my country too. You know, you imagine if America goes down, folks, who's going to lead the free world? Like Ireland, Australia, Monaco, Greenland? Who's going to do it, people? There's only one country that is keeping this world stable right now. Relatively stable. You imagine this country without America. And I just want to say one thing there, because if you look at America, you know, we've got a lot of bad stuff against us right now. You guys are aware of it more than anybody else is. And sometimes it's pretty hard to get up in the morning and confront all this stuff. And it's good that you have the fellowship that you do to encourage each other. But if you look at what we're facing now, you imagine what it was like in 1776, when you had a bunch of farmers and lawyers and blacksmiths and fishermen armed with squirrel rifles facing off against the world's greatest military machine. The Redcoats, the British Army, those Hessian mercenaries they had, that was the most formidable military machine that had been seen since Alexander the Great. And you had a bunch of colonials fighting this. How insane was that, folks? How crazy were your founding fathers to even think of it? But see, people say that was about taxes, right? The Boston Tea Party. And yeah, that was a factor. But look, if you look at Europe, every country in Europe but Britain had a state church. And you were told what to think and how to worship. And under King George in Britain, that was coming back. That was on the road to being re-established. And for 150 years, this country had been populated by people fleeing religious persecution in Europe. And they had their little colonies all over, your 13 colonies, all different denominations, but they were worshipping as they saw fit. And that was what made America different. And when they saw King George starting to reach into your country and dictate, they knew what was coming. That wasn't a war about taxes, folks. That was a war over religious liberty. And you saw that, the famous black-robed regiments. You know, the pastor that would get up in front of his church and he would preach the sermon with a Bible in his hand. And at the end of the sermon, he would open his robes and have a military uniform underneath. And he'd pull out his long rifle and say, "Who's following me?" And 350 men walked out of that church, people, to follow him on that road. And that happened all over the colonies. And you've got to think too, they say 3% of the population fought in that Revolutionary War. Maybe 20% supported it. And the rest either supported the British or didn't give a damn. Do those proportions make any sense to you guys today, folks? Are they similar today? It's always been the organised, dedicated and committed few that have made all the difference. And you guys are very much part of that committed few. Very much the backbone of it. So I'm not trying to hang a big responsibility trip on you, but the future of the Western world depends on you guys, people. You know? Because it does, you know? Because America depends on the committed conservatives, the committed Christian conservatives. That's what the future of America will be decided by. And the fate of the Western world depends on America. You think about it. If Donald Trump fails and the communists take down America and they wreck your economy, every freedom movement around the world, Brexit, what they're trying to do in Germany, France, that will all fizzle out. That will fizzle out in every corner of the globe. But if America can re-establish its constitution, rebuild its economy, rebuild its military, re-establish its place as the leader of the free world and actually mean it, that will spark liberty revolutions all over this planet, folks. That won't just be here. That'll be through Europe and Asia and Australia and New Zealand and Latin America. If they see America turn things around, they will do the same. Because if we blow this, we know the communists are going to come back hard and they're going to take you down and they're going to make life miserable for all of us. But if we really commit ourselves, to what we believe in, to our constitution, to our families, our country, and give it everything we've got, two things may happen. You'll give it everything you've got, and still we may fail. But at least you'll earn the right to look your children in the eye and say, "I did everything I possibly could." What is that worth to you, folks? And if you win, and you can win, because I do not believe that God is finished with this country yet by a long chalk. If you give it everything you've got and you win, and you turn this country around on a new direction, you will give your children not just the amazing country that you inherited, but one even greater. You will spark liberty revolutions all over this planet, folks. You will transform the world in ways you cannot imagine. Do you think your troops who fought that Revolutionary War, losing every battle, dodging British bullets, eating berries in the snow to survive for year after year after year, do you think they had any idea of the amazing country they were creating? Do you think they had any comprehension of what America would look like in 100 or 200 years? Do Do you think they had any understanding of the liberty and prosperity that America would bring to this planet? But they persevered, folks. They had an idea of liberty, and they gave it everything they got in this crazy adventure, and they won. Well, we're in that position today, folks. Liberty has to be fought for every generation. Sometimes in uniform, sometimes not. Well, right now we're not getting shot at, folks, and we've got to do everything we can to make sure that never happens. Is there anything more worth doing than fighting for your God, your Constitution, and your country? Anything more worth doing than preserving your children's future? Well, I'm asking you folks, no matter what you're doing now, and I know you're doing more than virtually anyone else, please do more, because the stakes have never been higher and the rewards have never been greater. So thank you very much, people. God bless America. God bless the JBS. God bless Wisconsin. God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you.
You've just seen a little of the left's plan to destroy America as we know it. Fortunately, the John Birch Society has a plan to stop their agenda. The John Birch Society agenda is our comprehensive 10-point game plan for victory. Every member gets a copy of this, either digital or print, when they join. It serves as a field manual for members to make a difference in their community. Existing members can log into the training section of jbs.org and access it there. The left also has big media to help advance their agenda. Fortunately, the John Birch Society has better media to help advance our agenda. Some examples of that: first of all, the New American. This magazine is the most accurate magazine in America. 2 issues per month, 24 per year. One of the best tools to not only inform yourself, but also to inform others. We also produce a lot of DVDs to educate and inform yourself and others. We have enough DVDs that you could literally show a different one every week for over a year. We have a number of excellent books that cover a wide variety of very important topics, again, so that you can inform yourself and inform others. We have enough books that you could literally read a different one every week for 2 years. We also have our National Speakers Bureau, where you can bring in speakers like Trevor Loudon into your community to help wake people up and get them involved. The left is highly organized. This is illustrated through demonstrations that take place in cities all across America, where the demonstrators all show up at the same time in different cities. They're waving the same signs, using the same slogans. They display the same website addresses like revcom.us. Fortunately, the John Birch Society is also highly organized, down to the grassroots level in communities all across the country. Everyone who loves big government hates the John Birch Society because the strength of JBS is our national grassroots concerted action educational army that works in concert on the monthly agenda that comes out in the bulletin every month. By bypassing big media, we're able to get the right information to the right people at the right time all across the country and flip the light switch on, exposing the plans of the left and thwarting their strategic objectives. So there is hope for America, and we invite you to be a part of it. Contact your local coordinator to apply for membership, apply to start a chapter in your neighborhood. Visit jbs.org or call 1-800-JBS-USA-1.